Good morning, Metaverse. I'm Thor with the OCG and Mafia Guild, and today we're going to talk about the Polis DAO. Now, I have my 1-year-old son, so if you hear baby noises in the background, exactly. Um, don't worry about it. I'm just a dad trying to make it through the day. So let's get into this Polis DAO and figure out what is so great about it. I think that it's actually been understated and oftentimes been referred to in some of the FUD that I've heard mostly. But people say, oh, all they did was started a DAO for the game, not a big update. I definitely disagree with that. To have the Polis DAO being implemented is a huge mile marker, and I want to talk a little bit more about why. So let's dive in. Great. So this is the Polis website, the Polis DAO governance website. It's bare bones, but I wanted to just go over it real quick. You have the basic aspects of this. The development team has, they said that they would deliver on Polis being able to be staked first, and that's exactly what they did. We didn't get a whole lot else, but we can go to the Locker tab and just take a look. The Polis voting power is what you get from locking the Polis and allows you to participate in the DAO governance structure. Then below that, it does say Atlas Locker. Now, the Atlas locking is not available yet, but when we do get that, something to look forward to is that we will get marketplace discounts and Polis rewards while the tokens are locked. So once that is available, that's something to look forward to. But let's go on to the Medium post. This is on medium.com, and it's about the Atlas DAO, and this is actually some really good information. Such good information that my little boy just has to read it. Now, why don't you read that out loud? No? Uh-huh. Okay, I'll read it. So we have the Polis DAO, and this is actually a lot of good information, so I recommend that you go to the Medium post and read it in its entirety. It gets you a really good idea. There's a little bit of background, some fluff information about the vision and all that kind of stuff. If it's the first time that you've come across Star Atlas, this is a great place to build a foundation of the ideology behind it and the spirit of what we are doing. But if you're been involved with the project for a while, the really good stuff starts coming in after the dual systems. Talks about Polis and Atlas, and then we talk about the levels of power. So the governance power that we get from staking the Polis are implemented into the Star Atlas DAO, which is the overarching DAO, the big universal DAO that everybody is a part of, regardless of your faction. And then you have the faction DAO, which, depending on what faction you chose, is Oni, Ooster, or Mud. And then you have the regional DAOs. And so this is for your local governments, the planetary systems that you'll be in. This is where you're really, get to know your neighbor and work with the people that you're around the most while you're playing this game. And so let's just take a quick look in the details that we're talking about. And I'll do my best to talk through baby interruptions. So we have the Star Atlas DAO. The Universal DAO is in charge of monetary policy, treasury management, and game-wide decisions. Yes, it's wonderful, isn't it? The treasury management is the biggest part that we know of right now because there's almost $2 million worth of Polis, depending on the market, of Atlas that has been built up from the playing of score. All of the 4 R's, the fuel, the food, the toolkits, and the ammo. Every time you purchase one, that has been going to the Polis DAO. And now we will be getting the voting power to decide what we do with that. Do we burn it? Do we buy something with it? Do we use that to execute contracts? And focus on the development of one part of the game or the other. These are the decisions that will be game-wide decisions, and the Treasury gives us the ability to do that. So that's really cool. There's actual funding to it. So the decision we make, even early on, can have real impact, not just ideas and procedural stuff. Maybe we do a law that says, don't touch the beard. That would be a game-wide decision. I'd be for that. And then we have the faction. So the faction-wide tax policies, the faction warfare coordination, access to end-game content. I'm not exactly sure what it means by that. But then development targets. Now this I'm theorizing here. I don't know this for sure, but the development targets might have something to do with how you get loyalty points if you, as the faction, can decide how you reward loyalty points so that you can encourage the development in one direction or the other for your entire faction. I think that would be a very good way to include the community in the development, the early development, just like your early development, our early development, and what type of faction and game Star Atlas is going to end up being. Now, I'm part of the Ooster faction, so I would go down to the Ooster faction and its regional DAOs after that. And as long as you're in that faction, as long as your wallet is part of that faction, you would be able to have voting power for that faction DAO. So as an Ooster, I don't have any ability to vote in the Oni faction. That's completely separate, and that division of power is very good in my estimation. So then you have your regional DAO, and that is local taxation incentives, local monetary incentives, and planetary restrictions. So this is the day-to-day operations and the general rule of law within those planetary systems. And that is going to be very important for dealing with your neighbors and for having regular everyday gameplay structured around some kind of rule set, and to have representation through ownership of Polis, I think is going to be great for the overall economy of the game. Now, with that in mind, let's go down to the Polis Locker information, and this is where I'm really focused and like what the decisions they made as far as setting up the Polis DAO system. And that is for people that are going to lock, you can lock as minimum as 2 weeks. 14 days you can have your Polis lock and then pull it right back out. If you do that, then you have a voting multiplier of 0.08x. So you actually have very little voting rights if you're just dipping your toe in for a short period of time. But if you're in for 3, 4, 5 years, you have serious multipliers on your voting power based off of your Polis amount. So if I stake $1,000, or 1,000 Polis into the DAO for 5 years, I have a voting power of 10,000 voting power. And that means if I am willing to put my assets on the line for a long period of time, I'm going to have far more say in what happens in the short term, and my planning will be focused on the long term because I'm here for 5 years. I'm locking myself in. And the decisions that are we see in the Web3 space and some games that have kind of burned themselves out, the decisions to do actions that would cause that are going to be naturally reduced, because the people, the community are very smart individuals. Whether they're smart and they want to focus on short-term gains, or they're smart and they focus on the long-term gains, this favors the long-term perspective. And that's where I fall in. I have more of a 5 to 10 year outlook for what I want to do and be a part of in Star Atlas. And so I'll be taking my Polis and staking it for 5 years. I am not staking, this is not financial advice, this is just common sense advice. I'm not staking in the DAO until I see some details on the expected returns, the APRs, the details that it's lacking right now. I'm not just going to stake it for the sake of staking it. I always want to know what I'm getting into before I get into it. But my plan is to put all of my Polis that I've been saving this whole time and put it in the 5-year lock, so I have the most say in the governance of the development of the game. And I love that gives people that really care and have that long-term perspective the lion's share of the power. After that, it talks about the PIPs, the proposals for new legislation that will require Polis improvement proposals, and Automata. Oh, it's not. It's okay. This is a good thing. No, I know, it's a lot of writing, and it's rules, and you have to follow them. But it'll help, it'll be good. Okay? It'll be good. And so, Automata will actually be doing the first PIP, and then most likely the second and third one to follow. The details on them are still able to be tweaked, but the first one, I believe, is to instate Automata as the developing entity behind Star Atlas, which I don't have any objections to that anyway, so that's totally fine. Now, Automata does have a controlling portion of the Polis, and they will be staking their Polis in the 3, 4, and 5-year time blocks. So they will, for the foreseeable future, have what they've said essentially is the veto power for any rules or changes that the community makes that is particularly harmful to the ecosystem. But as a general rule, they're going to stay out of the governance aspect of the game. Now that's we'll just have to trust them on that, but as they have done thus far, I've been very impressed by the way that they've maintained a good moral standing as far as a company operations concern. So I'm feel secure in believing that. And then this part just talks about the DAO Treasury, the 200 million Atlas, which is somewhere close to the $2 million mark. Again, depending on the market at any given time, but it's a substantial amount of funds. And I think that is great that we've, as a community, been able to create the motion, the cash flow, essentially, of activity in the ecosystem to have generated that type of starting fund to begin this whole thing. Now, this talks about the political game aspect of it, and I think that's important to see this, while we're waiting for the full Unreal Engine 5 version to come out, the space flying game. What kind of activities does the community have? Now, the Polis DAO gives the community the ability to start playing politics, which is a fun game. We play politics all the time, don't we? Yes, you're a dictator. And I'm a serf. I'm your servant. I'm indentured to you. That's the game we play. But hopefully, and if I have anything to do with it, that is not how the Polis governance is going to unfold. I will be very interested in the local taxation rates, the faction taxation, and that part of the governance, really the day-to-day operations and how we work together. That type of governance I would love to see maintain a very independent aspect to it. as explorers and adventurers in space, I want to have it be structured very much like a frontier scenario, where people aren't telling you what you must and have to do. It's not a matter of following every rule and regulation and choking out the freedom of the game. I want to see Star Atlas maintain that wild and exciting frontier feel through the governance and the taxation, or I should say the minimization of needed taxation. Be very diligent on that and vigilant, and that's the part of the game that I think would be actually very interesting and a cool teaching tool for children like yourself. Oh, maybe you'll learn being a dictator is not a good thing overall. Maybe we'll turn into a representative republic, maybe, or something. No. Yeah, no, probably not. So that's my thought on the governance aspect, being the real and actual influencers in our own society, in our own ecosystem that we are part of and control. I think that is just fascinating. It can't be understated how important this is. To get it right and get it right from the beginning. To have the right people to be influencers and to put our minds together, and some very fascinating and brilliant minds that are in the Star Atlas community from people that I've talked to and people that I have yet to meet. So I hope that opens up a lot of communication bridges and engagement and conversations that we can have going into the future. So I hope this video was helpful. Don't worry about liking or subscribing. Screw that algorithm. But if you know somebody that would be helpful for, go ahead and share it with them. And if you can do that, then today was a good day. Good morning, Metaverse. Good night, Bjorn.